Hello again to all the general IELTS students, and firstly I would just like to thank all of you who put your answers into the comments. Some really great responses, some good letters, and more importantly some very good improvements to what I used to see before Christmas, when you were just kind of writing without as much support with the particular question that you were doing. So the question I gave you yesterday was this. So basically, first thing you needed to do was say that you're having a party, then invite your friend, describe the restaurant, and say why you want your friend to come. So pretty straightforward in a lot of respects, and I just want to go through your strengths first of all, because as I said, there were a lot of things that I was happy with. Firstly, you answered every part of the question. So basically you had 4 things to do, you did those 4 things, and that was consistent throughout for everyone, that everybody did this, and this is great to see, very important, and well done with that. Sorry for all the horns outside, I'm living just off a highway and it pretty much never stops. That's me 24 hours a day when I'm in bed. It genuinely just never stops. You get used to it after a while, but my apologies. So you answered every part of the question, great job there. Your paragraphing was very good. You assigned 1 for each prompt as was required. Not everybody, but overall most people were able to assign the correct information for the correct paragraph. Not a lot of language errors, which is great to see. So vocabulary and grammar had very few mistakes. The use of modals, so the lesson, based on what you saw in my lesson yesterday, it seemed to click with a lot of you, and there was some good use of modals in your answers. And the language was less formal than normal. So before Christmas, one of the main problems that you guys had with informal letters, that the language was always much more formal than you would require. And basically you guys are less formal and you're making improvements, but I think there are still improvements to be made here. But definitely a strength in that you're getting better overall. And another thing was that it was very clear you guys were no longer writing to the examiner. I didn't even see one instance of this, so very well done there. Your focus was on the person in the letter, and that's exactly what I wanted you to do. Right, so we're just going to look at some of the most common mistakes and possible solutions and ways to avoid making these in future. The first problem was that they were very short. Not that they were too short, you weren't writing less than 150 words, but a lot of them were somewhere around 152, 53, 54, and that is just, you're cutting it too close to the limit. The problem with this is that when you're writing your essay, or excuse me, when you're writing your letter in the real exam, you're not going to be 100% sure that you're over the limit if you're always writing essays that are so close to the limit. If your letters are closer to 170 or 180 words, it will be much easier for you to know in the exam without having to count. So this kind of leads me to believe that you guys, when you're practicing your letters, that you're either counting the words, so perhaps you stopped at 130, you counted, and then you needed an extra 20 words, you went back and added them. That's not a good way to practice your writing. So you shouldn't be counting, and also it leads me to believe that if you weren't counting, you were probably typing up your letters. And again, if you're doing this, you're not getting the real practice of how long it's going to take, and the more the dynamics of the actual test. So you should be writing by hand, and you should be writing longer letters so that you can avoid counting in the test and using your time more productively. In the letter, you don't count the opening and the closing in your word count. So the "Hello Mary, it's been a long time since I've seen you," that will not be counted as your 150 words. And at the end, "I can't wait until I see you again," and "Yours faithfully, Michael," that is not counted in the word count. It's just what you have in the 4 body paragraphs. So you're not counting the start, the opening, and the closing of the letter. And these generic phrases like "hope you're well," "I can't wait to see you soon," like I was saying in the opening and the closing, these will not be counted in as the 150 words. So just make sure that you're not including these as part of the word count when you're writing your letters. Repetition was another common mistake, and there were different types of repetition. Now, I've used some of your sentences and some of your paragraphs in this feedback session. That does not mean that your letter was bad. This is just to help me describe what I'm trying to tell you. So the first type of repetition we had was repetition of ideas. So here, the reason I chose this restaurant was because its location. So number 1, its location, and delicious food, number 2. Then in the next sentence, it's located at the center of the city and was walking distance from the train station. So now we're going back to location again. So you're going from location to delicious, back to location, and then finally, the food offered was really tasty as well. So in this sentence, it's more detail on the previous, but really that's repetition, and you should just try to talk about location at one point and then mention delicious in the next. Repetition of vocabulary. Now this was just an obvious one. I like its location as it's located. We would never use 2 forms of the same word as close as that. Overall, you want to avoid repetition of vocabulary if possible. If you don't have a different word, it's better to make sure you're using the word correctly than avoiding repetition. But if you have the range of vocabulary, just stay away from overusing anything. And inviting the person in the first paragraph. This was something that I talked about in the lesson yesterday. But basically, you were just asked to describe or to explain that you were having a party in the first paragraph, and the second paragraph was going to be about inviting the person. So in these 3 examples here, you can see that they have described the situation about the party, but also invited the person. So hope you're well, I'm just writing to invite you for a party. Next one, I'm just writing to invite you. Next one, I'm writing to invite you. So here the person has already invited the person, and then in the second paragraph, which is about inviting the person, it's repetition. So just pay more attention when you're planning your letter, and pay more attention to not crossing over the information that is required in each paragraph. Next one was unfocused paragraphs. Now again, please don't be upset if you see your own paragraph. What you have here is basically a well-written paragraph which achieves the purpose of the paragraph, but the focus isn't on what it should be. So the first one we're looking at, this was supposed to be inviting your friend. So I'm just going to read this paragraph to you here first. As you know that I am turning 33 years next Monday, I decided to throw a party on 22nd of January in the evening at the Woodlands restaurant situated near the city centre. I'd be pleased to see you with your family. So here the invitation is just the very last sentence. So what you would want is more have that invitation at the start, so that the paragraph is more focused on doing what it should do instead of leaving it till the end and still achieving the requirements of the paragraph. Still, it has its purpose, but it's not as focused as you would want it to be. The next paragraph is similar, but was about why you chose the restaurant. So here we have La Bacca is a cozy little restaurant with exquisite food like mouth-watering pizza and pasta and great variety of beverages. So here you're more focused on a description of the restaurant, but not really that you chose it for that reason. So very simply, it could have just been, I chose this restaurant, I chose La Bocca because it is a cozy little restaurant, and that would have solved that problem. So again, just to make it more focused on the prompt that you were given in the question. And why you chose the restaurant again, I've chosen a Chinese restaurant as a venue, so that's just a fact. That's not really why. This place is new and started a few days back. So again, you're just more focusing on describing focusing on describing the restaurant rather than describing why you chose that particular restaurant. So again, those paragraphs were actually quite good, but could have been improved by just switching the focus a little bit. This is just one example, and to be honest, it's just a cultural thing. But in English, when we're asking a friend to do something, we tend to go around in circles a little bit. So just try to avoid being so blunt. We see this a lot in the essay where you're, in the letter, in the writing service, where you're asking your friend to take care of your house or take care of your pet or something like that. And basically, you can't just list the things you want the person to do. You have to ask them or suggest it to them, or if they don't mind and things like that. Now, this person has attempted to do this, so it's not a perfect example of what I'm trying to tell you, but I've also invited Raoul, and if it's fine with you. So here, this phrase is showing that there's a politeness involved, but the end of it, just pick him up from his place. So this just pick him up part, that little phrase there in English would just take back from the politeness of it. So if you had just gone with, and if it's fine with you, how would I say it? And if it's fine with you, would you mind picking up Raoul from his place? There, something like that. So it's just a small little tweak, but try not to be too blunt, because it kind of ruins the tone of the letter when you've been so nice and polite for the rest of it. Okay, what I have here then is a series of 4 sentences from your essays that are actually well written, but some of the vocabulary was a bit more formal than would have been expected. So what I want you to do is pause the video, get a pen and pencil, and just see if you can edit these yourself before you see the answers. So in about 4 seconds, I'm going to show you what words I would have used instead to make it sound less formal, and then you can see if what you chose is in any way comparable. So for number 1, very simply, I would just swap available for free. You might think it's not a big difference, but when we're talking to a friend, we would be more likely to use this language. Number 2, so just a contraction, it's, and then really instead of quite. I understand that these are not, these words don't mean exactly the same thing, but the way we use them would more reflect whether we're being formal or informal. The reason why I chose this restaurant was because of its location and delicious food. Now this sentence is very well written, and the grammar and the accuracy is great. I wasn't even sure if I'd include it, but I just felt that a small little tweak would have made it sound less formal and more appropriate for the letter. So just have a look at this yourselves. I decided to book this place because the location is really handy and the food is delicious. So again, the first sentence was good, but this is just a little bit more kind of relaxed and less formal. And the final one, I'm delighted to invite you and your family members to the party, which is scheduled at 6 p.m. Again, a well-written sentence, but would be less formal like this. I really want you and your family to come to the party, and it starts at 6 p.m. So again, all good attempts, but just to show you, just to highlight the small differences, just to highlight the small differences between formal and informal. And what I've noticed with most of your writing, this is not just today, but in the last few months, the last 8 months or however long I've been working here, that basically when you're writing a task 2, it's an academic, and you have that style, you're kind of mastering it and getting the hang of it. But when it comes to an informal letter, that you're really finding it difficult to drop the similar structures that you're using. So what you might want to think about is that informal letter would be closer to the language you use in the speaking test, so like your spoken English, than it is to the language in the task 2 part of the writing test. So obviously there's more of a correlation between those 2 different styles. Okay, and what I've done here is I've taken paragraphs from different answers that you posted. So this is not written by one student, this is written by 3 or 4 students, where I've just taken a paragraph from each. So I've written this to Chris, and I've signed it by myself so that I can take some of the glory of your good writing. So first, I'm just writing to let you know my birthday celebration next week is in one of my favourite restaurants in town. So basically, you've just paraphrased what it said in the question. You haven't added anything about inviting the person, and it's all there very clear and very concise. So here's the invitation. I'd be absolutely delighted if you have free time and are available to come to my party. So this is great. You've just gone straight to the point. Of course, Andrew and your little Sophie should come along. I particularly like this because it kind of shows some kind of role play and some commitment to the idea that you're writing a letter to this person who you know. So this is exactly what you would expect from a letter to a friend, and why not include it? The more the merrier. This kind of idiom, if you know you're using it correctly, is great. Stay away from it if you don't know how to use idioms, but in this case, that's spot on, used right. Just as a reminder, it's going to be on Wednesday, so a reminder, you assume that this person already knows when your birthday is because you're such good friends, and then just the time, just to clear up when it's starting. Third paragraph about the restaurant. Now, this doesn't relate directly to what I was saying in the previous part, but basically, I have to say this restaurant is one of the best in town. So this person hasn't stated that the restaurant, that this is the reason they've chosen the restaurant, but this is the person's opinion at the start, so it's inferred that this description is about why the restaurant was chosen. So without explicitly saying it, the idea is still there. I checked the reviews in Trivago.com, and almost 5,000 customers used their service and were completely satisfied, with complete satisfaction. So again, just kind of more honest and realistic reasons for choosing the restaurant. So really good, really solid stuff here. And the final one then was, I'd greatly appreciate if you'd be able to make it, as we haven't seen each other since Easter, and I've got lots of things to update you with. So this is just basically what you would expect. A reason why you want the person to come is going to be that you want to see them. That's going to be the most obvious reason, and just very clear from the very beginning that I want you to come here, I want to see you again, we have things to talk about. Also, it'll be a great opportunity to catch up with our old friends from college, in that there's an extra bit of detail here just to flesh out the paragraph. So again, you guys, if you want to just pause it, have a look. I haven't removed the grammatical or the vocabulary errors from this. That's not really why we're looking at it. We're just looking at this from a structure and from a content perspective. So really strong here, and good work overall. Okay, so if you guys have any questions about any of this, or any questions relating to the actual lesson yesterday, please put them in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions. Okay, thank you guys.